I feel like it's an honor to get this opportunity to share our thoughts and share our experience. Basically, still we are gaining experience. It's not an ending. It'll continue till we finish our academic career. But anyway, it's a nice opportunity given for both of us to share our experience and what we are doing at the moment and what we are trying to do with regard to the research culture as well as this teaching case study culture in the country. And this is a timely move, and I feel like it's a good opportunity for us to share our thoughts, our ideas with you all, which could be useful for your uh, this great endeavor in developing more and more cases in relation to Sri Lanka, but uh, applicable across the globe. What I see here, the interest to develop case studies, which is quite eminent, which is quite apparent here. And the other thing is the collaboration between academic community as well as the industry partners. This collaboration is essential. I should say the most essential thing in order to develop these cases because academicians are developing cases, they are trying to develop cases, they are writing cases, but actually the cases are available among industry partners because the cases which are having in our places, they are more like academic related matters. But when it comes to business cases are available among practitioners, among business partners. So it's a very good move to get them on board, get their support, and also to develop their awareness with regard to this most essential and crucial element of developing case studies, which are basically for teaching and application purposes. This interest we can translate into a nice outcome because this is why I am emphasizing on this interest. This is the most essential element that we wanted actually in our efforts to have because without having the interest, you can't motivate yourself and then you can't work towards a clear goal. So having this interest among you all is quite important, and that I need to praise at the beginning of this discussion. Again, I should thankful to the team of organizing team and also Dr. Dushant Vikrama and others for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts. So hopefully what we are going to discuss today would be helpful for your worthy efforts in future. So through this effort, what we are trying to do here, we will try to enhance your understanding because I can't say that you don't know anything, but looking at the forum as well as the participants, you all are quite aware of what we are trying to do. And what we try to do here, we will elaborate on more on the understanding of key aspects of teaching cases and also to see why these teaching cases are important for what we can use basically, and most importantly, the process of developing cases, including the teaching note. But what we can see lots of cases, but we feel like there are issues in using them for our analyzing purposes. There is no proper guide called teaching note. Therefore, the development of teaching note is uh, uh, is an important element to make it a teaching case. Um, we understood this important requirement as two of us, Dr. Sujiva and myself, were entrusted to teach business case studies course for our doctoral students, DBA students. But when we were trying to find some important or the relevant cases in relation to our country, we found some issues in finding relevant cases for us to use. We heavily relied on developed country cases or cases published in outside. We had some issues in finding cases in relation to Sri Lanka. So we thought of incorporating that development of teaching cases as an important aspect of our course. We identified the interest among business partners because corporate leaders, practitioners are there reading for their doctoral studies. So getting their support and then developing the awareness would help us to go ahead with this teaching case development. They responded nicely, and as a result of this, we came out with this business case studies book. More importantly, we have teaching notes as well. The effort is continuing. Now the interest has grown to a different level, and awareness is broadening, and the workshops or the conferences like these are promoting this important aspect of case studies in our research culture. So it is quite pleasing to see in our country. Therefore, giving you all some or sharing our thoughts is also a kind of a blessing for us as well. Right. First of all, we will try to understand what is a case study. Here, we are referring to a case study which we can use for teaching purposes, application-oriented case studies. So as we understand, it should be a storyline of a contemporary important topic. So I say it is a storyline, so it should have a nicely flown stories, events occurred in relation to a particular phenomenon. That phenomenon, as you all have correctly identified as the theme for this year's case study development activity, that should have a contemporaneous importance. This is where you can attract more readership. This is where you can gain a mileage for your publication, as well as this is where you can disseminate knowledge for the interested parties. This storyline should be a kind of a reality that should be systematically developed as well as systematically presented. When it comes to this systematically developed case or a storyline, that definitely shouldn't be an essay. That means presenting viewpoints of the author. We don't expect to be there in a teaching case study. The case study should develop a story, but the story should be developed in a systematic manner. What do you mean by this systematic manner? It should be based on data or information collected in relation to the particular phenomenon through reliable sources. Therefore, developing that storyline, developing the story, connecting series of events occurred in relation to the particular phenomenon, but evidence, so the information that we produce in the case study should be collected through this more reliable sources, information basis. Now, for example, say if we are to develop a case based on an organization which is resurging after maybe collapsing after a bankruptcy. So in that case, the storyline could be developed before, or maybe what led them to come to that bankruptcy level, and then thereafter resurgence. So when it comes to this entire process of the story, everything what we write should be presented in an interesting manner, as well as information should be captured, collected through reliable sources. We should omit producing any unnecessary as well as unreliable information in a case study. So if you do so, it becomes rather different to what we should have presented. So in that case, the storyline should be revealed based on systematically collected information. But at the same time, since it is a particular phenomenon, now especially being a quantitative researcher for me, I should say that using quantitative techniques, statistical surveys, statistical techniques, data
Let's have a couple of minutes till our resource persons sort it out.
So having some technical issue. So Professor Sampath will join now.
Thank you, Dr. Sujeva.
So he's joining. Please give us a minute.
Sure, madam.
Right. I'm really sorry about the interruption. Actually, that is another phenomenon these days. Continuous power failures. Then, as a result, the works are being affected. Anyway, so what I have been emphasizing, it's about revealing revealing a story, revealing a true story, which is based on true information rather than producing information which are in mind or maybe the writer's information. And at the same time, with regard to the application of research method or maybe what we call the methodology for collecting data and so to producing them in a case study. So I afraid to say that there is a little role to play for quantitative data analyzing, data collecting techniques. What happens here, this case study, which is based on a particular phenomenon, and that phenomenon should be revealed and need to provide a deeper understanding when it comes to the producing of a deeper understanding. Though I am a quantitative researcher, I need to emphasize and praise the role of what qualitative techniques, what qualitative research methods are playing. In that case, we should not try to provide um, a statistical analysis or maybe to use high-end or advanced techniques to provide information, but basically it's based on qualitative information. So that is another important aspect we need to make sure when it comes to developing a teaching case study. So it is a kind of a storyline that we have to produce based on real information. And also that in-depth understanding is quite important to attract the interest and as well as to provide the better understanding about the case, what we develop. Then with regard to developing the case study, as I said earlier, what we need to reveal through a case study, it basically the reality. Reality is what actually happens or what actually happened. When it comes to a teaching case study, or basically a case study, so it has a historical aspect involved. It may not be a current existing situation, but it may be based on a current phenomenon or existing situation. But when we are going to discuss about the case information, we have to discuss about how they have maybe reached or as a result of what, as a result of serious decisions, or maybe different influence, environmental factors, or management styles, or it could be anything, what led them to come to that particular stage. And also we need to think about to produce some hints, some information about what would be the future of the particular phenomenon. So in that case, revealing reality is what we need to focus at, not to write about and around the information, but basically revealing the reality. That means the real life situations about the contemporary situations of a particular phenomenon. And at the same time, this has a teaching orientation. And also, this is a kind of a tool that we can use for teaching purposes, especially with when you are referring to a teaching case studies. That teaching interest, and usually we use these case studies more in postgraduate studies. There are instances we use for undergraduate studies as well. But as per my understanding and the experience, case studies are important tools to provide this application orientation, application of theories, theoretical underpinnings, theoretical assumptions, and different perspectives. And that application part is seen more vibrantly in postgraduate studies. In that case, when we are developing a case, so as I said earlier, it's about revealing a true story. And when we are revealing that true story, we need to keep an eye or keep a space or keep a focus on how students or maybe somebody who is going to analyze the case should use different theoretical models, theoretical perspectives, theoretical underpinnings when they are going to analyze them. So in that case, when we write teaching cases as authors, we have to keep an attention or keep an eye on what are the possible theoretical lenses that could be applied in analyzing a teaching case. So this is very important. Otherwise, when it comes to the teaching case analysis, students may not be, or the people who are analyzing the case may not be aligning different theoretical assumptions or the theories for their studying purposes. So when we reveal the case, so we need to keep that parallel understanding on how we can incorporate a particular theory or series of theories, different theories in the in future when it comes to the analytical stage. Now, for example, if we are revealing a corporate collapse as our teaching case, so we need to keep an eye on what kind of theoretical understanding, what kind of theories, as well as knowledge in relation to corporate governance can be accommodated or can be learned or can be applied by the students or the people who are analyzing those cases when they are going to analyze the case. And at the same time, this teaching case, as you all know and understand, is quite different from a case study research. So we all know case study research is trying to answer maybe why and how questions according to my little understanding on qualitative research. In here, in this teaching case study, it's not actually answering to a research are trying to answer to particular questions. So that shouldn't be the aim of a teaching case. So the teaching case should focus on providing information, facts and information uh, in a way that we can open eyes of the readers to utilize or to apply different theories and knowledge that they have gained through different courses and subjects. Therefore, when we are developing a case, answering to a particular research question type of a thing is not required, but it is revealing or unveiling that information hidden or information in relation to the reality of a selected phenomenon, what we are going to reveal in a case study. Then, why we have to use a case study? So as I said earlier, as you all emphasized throughout the information session, so this is quite an effective learning method. So we have seen and we have experienced um, uh, through our engagements in DBA studies or DBA teaching, when we are facilitating them. So using these case studies, the development part as well as analyzing part, so can be considered as very effective teaching experience and also learning experience. So why I say it is very effective. So this is directly related to various skills that learning partners are expecting to develop. Now, for example, the one major important aspect of for academicians as well as postgraduate students is the perseverance, a sheer determination to achieve a particular outcome. Even in the life of academia these days, we all know that the workload is so high, and the working or dealing with academic matters increasingly becoming secondary to administrative as well as some other due to various reasons. So the sheer determination is quite important to come up with an outcome. So if you have a determination to complete or publish a case study, so you see what kind of an effort or what kind of skills that you need to have to develop. So therefore, to incorporate that or have that sheer determination. So if you decide to complete a successful case study or a research is quite important in this particular era. And at the same time, so many other skills we have seen and we have experienced, and according to the student feedback, they have developed so many skills, negotiation skills, you see, a lot to negotiate, and then data analyzing skills, and then time management skills, then other management skills, planning, coordination. So many other skills that they can develop through these case studies, analytical skills, intellectual skills, and then how to sustain a motivation until the completion of a particular task. So working as an independent person. So likewise, I can provide a list of skills that we can develop by engaging in developing a teaching case study, because teaching case study not just the development of facts of information and also to develop the teaching note. I think that will be explained very well by Dr. Sujiva later on. So the entire engagement of developing a teaching case study would provide an opportunity for us to develop many skills in our academic life. And also, lots of troubles, struggles, like handling those issues. So many things that we can talk about. Those who have done case studies and then research might know what other hassles we have in order to come up with a better outcome. And at the same time, so many doubts academic doubts, I should say, can be handled by having teaching case studies. The doubts like what, sometimes what, or which theory, and what kind of set of knowledge you need to apply, and then how, when, why, all those questions would be there in a teaching case. Even when we are developing questions in the teaching note, we can accommodate these kind of academic doubts for students or participants to address by using information in the case study, as well as by using the relevant theoretical lenses that we expect them to use through a particular case study. Therefore, it's a kind of a big opportunity for anybody to develop kind of skills um, which is required for an academician as well as a practitioner. And at the same time, what we can see utilizing a teaching case for teaching works, it's quite effective. Not easy, but very effective. It's not like reading a textbook and preparing some slides and then disseminating it, and then asking students to write down notes, and then preparing exam questions and completing the teaching task. Because using case studies in our day-to-day teaching works quite challenging, and it is challengeable because for a teaching case study, the questions that we incorporate, there are no right or wrong answers in the most of the situations, because different people can bring out different perspectives, different theoretical underpinnings, the understanding, the experience. So many things can be accommodated when we use or when we apply teaching case studies in teaching works. Especially the application of knowledge would be different from one person to the other, based on the expertise, based on the exposure, based on the experience. See, the knowledge can be applied in different format or different means when it comes to using a teaching case study. So therefore, for a teacher, it is challenging, and also for students, so many opportunities there. So the reason is, as I said, different views can be accommodated. We can create kind of a debate, and also one person's argument, maybe answer, can be challenged by another group of people, and also the questions can be exchanged. Different viewpoints could be there, and in there, the teacher's role, for the person who is bringing a case study to the classroom, should know how to play that intermediary role. Therefore, it's quite challenging but very effective, because it opens up for many different viewpoints, many different opinions from the participants. So all in all, what we can say, using teaching case studies in the classroom, so it is quite effective tool to disseminate knowledge, especially the application of knowledge, what we want to incorporate in our teaching practices. And at the same time, teaching case studies, we can praise its worthiness highly and loudly. For anything in the world, if there are advantages, there are some disadvantages as well. So, as in case studies, there are some limitations that we need to understand. So, why we need to understand these limitations, how we can avoid them, so how we can reduce them to a minimum level. So, what is the main advantage of a teaching case study? Right, as I said throughout, it is providing a deeper understanding, very informative, factful, right? Most of the cases, true information. Sometimes the name of the case can be anonymous, designations can be anonymous, and so what we need to hide, we can hide because that's about academic writing, and also to ethical writing uh, aspects as well. but information can be revealed and also a deeper understanding can be produced because it is single phenomenon most of the case, and then information about the storyline that we have to reveal. That same advantage could convert into a disadvantage because cases can be lengthy. So, because depending on the richness of information, depending on the history that you need to produce, and depending on the complexity of maybe complexity of decision making or the impact of environmental factors, so many other things, the length of the case sometimes it may be extensive. That case, there is a challenge for authors to keep the interest of the reader throughout the work because it's quite narrative. And as I said, it's difficult to incorporate some statistical analysis and all those. And as a result, well, information, full of information, facts and all. So this is kind of a challenge the author has if the case study is becoming much more lengthier. In that case, that keep the interest of the reader, how nicely we produce information, how uh, we organize information to ensure seamless reading is quite important thing to look at. And at the same time, case studies sometimes can be uh, complained as lacks rigor. So lacks the lack of rigor could arise, maybe a lack of richness in applying research methodology. In research, we know we can use theorization, we can use conceptualization, and also we can use literature review because in a case study, practical case, literature review is missing. There is no literature support, no discussion is there, and analysis may not be rich as such because analysis is very primitive. It's basically to extract information what we know to produce. So in that case, so from researchers' point of view, there can be a criticism of being somewhat uh, lacking in the sense of rigor. So that is there, but still we can produce all important information, facts, thought-provoking facts, and about the reality to make it much more interesting for readers to understand what we want to encompass. And finally, this generalization issue. So that is quite eminent. We can't generalize this particular phenomenon, particular case to another situation because cases are different from one for the other, one from the other. But still, it can be used as a useful pack of information to understand what is going on in relation to a particular phenomenon. So it's all about enhancing, improving the knowledge and understanding of a given phenomenon. So this is another limitation that we can highlight. We cannot use it as a tool to or pack of information which could be generalized to another setting or another aspect. So all in all, what I try to emphasize so far, what is the case, and then why we need case studies, and how we can use it in our teaching and learning process, and then what basically we need to accommodate in a case study, and also advantages and some limitations that we need to confront when you are developing a case study. Here on, I will hand over the presentation to Dr. Sujiva to continue with the rest of the information. So in the discussion session, I will come again to clarify any clarifications or doubts that you have in the audience. Thank you. Dr. Sujiva, over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. So let me share the document. Right. So thank you very much, Professor Sampath. And before moving to the next section, so I would like to thank Dr. Dushan Jaivikrama, the Dean of the Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce, so for giving us this opportunity to share the knowledge among these our two faculties, so two universities, and Dr. Nilangi Nanayakar and Dr. Gayani Samarakon for coordinating this, inviting this, so having this fruitful workshop. So now, Professor Sampath Kehelwalathana discussed about, so what is a case? Then he talked about why we need case and how we can use it as a mechanism to teach our students. So now let's look at technically how we can develop a good teaching case. So with that, I'm using these slides as well as certain documents, certain cases that we published, as well as the cases that you're planning to publish as well. So if you're having any doubt, so let's discuss at the end aspect of the session. So we are keeping some time for that as well. So what is a good teaching case? You can say a teaching case become very good or quality when it is engaging and interesting. So for the students, for the instructors, if you are taking that to train the people, for the executives, so they should be very interesting. So let's talk about how we can make it interesting later. Something to learn. So remember, we are writing the cases to teach something. So therefore, having the learning objectives, proper learning objectives, very few learning objectives are very critical. Then the supporting facts and data, as Professor Sampath says, so we want facts and data for this. So this fact and data that we have to find out, so we are using basically primary data. So because it conveys the power of the case, it shows the impact as well as it shows the credibility as well. So therefore, having supporting facts is very critical for a teaching case. Next one, application of concepts and theories. So I will talk about the concepts and theories later. Real life scenarios are the practical relevance. So for our student, what is lacking is, so they are having very less simulations. So we are trying to bring some real life scenarios, so which are having practical relevance to the areas that they are studying. So we have to bring a very nice real life scenario into our case and multiple perspectives. And in the meantime, the case should be very complex. So the complexity that you have to determine based on the level that you are going to target. So if it is a BBA, so the complex level, what is the suitable complex level? If it is for a master level, so you have to enhance the complex level. So likewise, you have to determine, you have to have a focus to whom that you are writing the case. So these are the characteristics of a good teaching case. So knowing them and keeping them in our mind, so let's look at this slide. This is very important because it's talk about all the aspects of a good teaching case. You can see in the center, you're focusing the case. And this case to be connected with the business situation and to be connected with the learning objectives and everything to be connected with the theory. So if any part is lacking, then your case won't be a good case. So therefore, remember, you're having a theory. Theory in the sense, it may be a framework, it may be a reading, it may be a certain concept from the article that you want to take. Say, for simply example, the five forces model you want to teach, or there's the balance scorecard you want to teach, activity-based costing. So how you are going to apply that? So that is the theory. So may not be not a sort of a vast theory like the stakeholder theory or a institutional theory. Here, it may be a very simple framework, or either it can focus about a certain reading, or it may focus about certain phenomenon discussed in an article. Then, as you can see, so you should have several learning objectives. So what I experience is, so have some few key learning objectives. Plus, remember, those learning objectives to be connected with the discussion questions. Then, if you look at the left-hand side, so you are looking at the business situation. So what are the key company contexts that you have to talk about? So what is the issue or the dilemma that you're going to talk about? This is very critical, the issue, and this is also very critical, that is the decision maker. So the decision maker is having a prominent role when you're developing the case. I will talk about it. Then other than that, so when you are writing a case, so like Dr. Neelangi said, you should have a plan. So now it's better to have a plan on which date you are writing the first draft, the second draft, the finalized version, so and so forth. And you have to determine a very nice, catchy name for your case. Because this is not an article that we produce. So article may be a sort of a boring reading, but this one we are giving to students for them to learn from that and to simulate a certain situation. So the case name is very critical for a good quality case. So I'm actually a reviewer of these emerging market cases. So I have reviewed around 5-6 cases that submitted to them. So there, what was mainly lacking were certain cases that certain amendments are required. So that was because the case decision maker wasn't nicely and for a required level, they haven't taken out. So this decision maker point or the decision maker, we call in the case study development as a case protagonist. So you can see I have highlighted that also. The case protagonist is very critical. So if you are not highlighting the case protagonist, it's a reason for rejecting the case. In the emerging market cases also what I reviewed, so I mentioned for several cases, so bring the protagonist out. So bring the protagonist to the foreground. It is very critical. Then the description of the problem's context. So now here, of course, we are dealing with the problem. As I showed you here, the issue or the problem. So when you are bringing the facts, when you are bringing the context, everything should focus on the problem. You don't have to write the context unnecessarily, but look at the problem and bring the context according to the problem. So that is also a very critical aspect. So some of the cases that submitted to emerging market, so the context was too broad. So I said, no, this is too broad, that you have to summarize and eliminate unnecessary facts, redundant facts, and make it very short and make it very precise and make it develop surrounding the problem and the case protagonist. Then your supporting data can range from the data tables, quoted statements as Professor Sampath mentioned, supporting documents, sometimes maybe images. So images are also playing a very important role when you're developing a case. Say for an example, I will show you some examples. Say that you're writing a case about a company. So maybe some critical incidences that you're talking about, if you can take some pictures, so that gives you a high value. On one hand, it gives you a credibility. On the other hand, it makes the students to read and make it so interesting for them to read. So therefore, bringing the quoted statement, bringing the images, bringing the required supporting documents are very critical when you are developing a good teaching case. So I'll move into the slide number 11. I will discuss the theoretical aspect here. Thereafter, I will take what Dr. Neelangi shared with me, your case and the teaching note development template. Then I will talk about what you have to write over there by taking several examples. But before that, let me finish this theoretical aspect. But we are moving to those examples by keeping all of these main points in your mind. It is normally say you have to do some backward design. Start from identifying learning outcomes. So from the case, we are trying to teach something to our student. What you are trying to teach. So you have to keep that in your mind and you have to think about the case. So how we are going to develop who is the protagonist, what is the problem, so and so forth. So knowing your learning objectives is very critical at the beginning itself when you're developing your case. Then the scenario. So as I told you, this protagonist is the critical case. So we published the case in the Sage Case Journal. I will show you that example as well. So there were several revisions took place. That is because what they mentioned was your protagonist is not critical in the case. Maybe that when you are taking a case, there are several decision makers. You could see several protagonists. But out of those protagonists, take the key person out. Take the key person to the forefront. That is what I learned by writing. So, and develop the case surrounding that protagonist. Emphasizing the protagonist is critical when you are developing a case for an international publication. Then the tension. So, you have to create a tension. You have to create a sort of a complex situation, scenario. And remember that scenario is open-ended and no one right answer and leave it unresolved. It is very critical. So when you look at a certain complex scenario, you can look at it from different theoretical lenses. Say for an example, a certain sort of an issue, you would look at that from the change management perspective. You would look at from the leadership perspective. You would look at that from another calculatory perspective. So perspective or what you are trying to ask student to look in, you are giving in the hint in the teaching note. So you have to keep it very open-ended and no one right answer and you are not solving the problem in the case. You are just creating the tension and you finish the case. So the student's role is to think about it and come up with the sort of the solutions. Present enough information for the analysis. This is also very critical. If you are asking them to analyze certain thing, so giving record information is also very critical. So make sure that you're providing all the necessary information to answer those discussion questions. But don't worry, so you're not missing that because at the end of the teaching note, you're writing answers for the questions that you have developed. So at that point, you would evaluate whether the given information is sufficient. So you may update your case again. So you're going some back and forth process when you're developing the case. Present but do not evaluate the problem. You present the problem, you're not solving, but you're not evaluating, just giving the problem. Allow for multiple realistic precision, as I told you, and developing a good teaching note is also reflecting the quality of your case. So the teach the case and revise it. So the very final one is also very important, not like writing an article. So when you are doing the, or when you develop your case, you would take it to the class, you would teach it, you would revise it before going for a publication. So that opportunity is there with us. So certain publications, certain publishers ask whether you have taught that in the class. Come up with the evidences, then we can publish the case. So that scenario is also there. So you have the opportunity to revise the case by taking them to a class and giving them an understanding. So how this case should be further developed. So writing cases is not easy like writing an article. So for me, it is rather easy. Developing the teaching case is a harder job because you have to look at from multiple perspectives, teacher perspective, writer perspective, as well as the student's perspective. Then the case writing. Articulate the critical issue and or the tension. Your protagonist will provide this. Say for an example, you select a company. Then you're talking to a certain protagonist or some key decision maker. From there, you can find out a particular issue. So when you see the initial issue, you have to think about the learning objectives as well. Then only you're developing the case. So now you have to have sufficient information to articulate the case. So therefore, you have to talk to your protagonist several times and understand and make your issue as a critical one and show that to your students. Summarizes the information needed to make the decision. Carefully consider your interview as a mode of research. So as Professor Sampath very correctly mentioned, interviews plays a key role when you're developing a teaching case, right? So therefore, you have to gather the information, and your interview guide should have sufficient number of questions, sufficient depth having question in order to capture required data to develop your case. List necessary data for analysis to make the decision. So you can have your own list. Then you can like go with you when you're talking to a protagonist. So you can talk to them several times and you can tick the list, and so you can ensure that you're having sufficient information to write the case. So that's simply about case writing process. So very few more slides are there for me to discuss before going to move into your template and looking at some examples. Case interviews or the data collection. Do background reading on your company and protagonist. You may know the critical issue, so you should have a sense of the kind of information needed to make a decision. So if you are thinking about developing a company, say the pick me. So do some background reading. So read some newspaper article which talk about the pygmy. So you can find out, gather information, so which publish about the company. Background reading is essential because when you're meeting the protagonist, you should know what is happening with this company. So then only you can dig into information and find out where the issues are happening. So prepare interview questions, the second point, but also have some sense of potential answers. Ask some questions, you know the answer to, but will help you to get a sense of the company culture. So you may know about the company, but still talk to them and verify about that particular piece of information that you know. It is very essential because we are going to talk about a company real situation and we are going to publish about a company. So we have to be very careful in teaching case writing. Formulate questions that will gather appropriate data for making the decision. So now you have to formulate your interview guide which gather required and appropriate data to develop your case and to make the several decisions about the case. So case interview data collection, mainly go with interview, say for an example, you're going for a calculation, activity-based costing. Say for an example, you want to like students about implementing activity-based costing in an organization. For that, you're bringing data. Of course, you have to look at their data sets. You have to look at their data sets and bring them other than the interview data. So interviews data also supportive, but the way that you are developing the question determine what type of data are required to develop your case. Then the content of the case. So after discussing the content, so I will be moving to some example. Interesting title. This is very, very important. Title should be very catchy, not like the article's title. It's very interesting, which talk about basically, so what is the issue of the company and what is the company. So in the title, you have to provide the company name, or you can disguise the company name. Disguise in the sense you are not revealing the company name, but the facts are sort of ideal situations of the company. But if the company is not willing to like reveal the company name, you can have a sort of a disguise name, ABC company. So I will show you some disguise case that I have written. So you would use a disguise one. Otherwise, you would publish the company name, but be very careful without writing permission from the company. Do not reveal the company name. because it's having several issues. So have a in writing sort of like permission from them, then only you can reveal the company name. So you have to focus on an incident happen. I will show you with an example. You could have a prologue. Dr. Neelangi called the prologue as an abstract. So I will show you the difference and how do you develop the prologue or a preface. Industry background. Story. Story is basically now we are developing the issue, developing the dilemma, developing the problem. So key aspects of the main issues focus. So within the story also you could have some subtopics. So where you're focusing on the main issue. Notes if you have any. I will show you some examples and the references as well. So this is basically here I'm talking about the main case study, but not the teaching note. So let me talk about the teaching note as well. Teaching note, we would call some people or the some publishers call it as the instructor manual. Some publishers talk it as the teaching note. Whatever the way, that's basically how we are going to like support to the teacher to teach the case. Then for there, you have to write a synopsis. I will show you some example. Your learning objectives. So when you are writing your objectives, you would use the Bloom's taxonomy that we all are using when you are developing our like learning outcomes. Your research method, your assignment questions. If you are given any additional material, say for an example, your case talk about the activity-based costing. Some additional material about activity-based costing. How do you derive the cost pools? How do you derive the cost drivers, how do you calculate the cost drivers rates, so and so forth, some additional materials. Now, publishers are more interested about the video clips for references. So when we were trying to publish a case in the case journal, so one of the reviewers' comment were, the younger generation now are more reluctant to read, but instead they're willing to watch videos. So can you provide some video clips for your references? So then what we did was, so we went through the YouTube. So some very good videos, the clip references we have given. That is possible, actually a valid point. So video references make it more interesting for the reader to understand the situation of the case. Suggested co-reading you would suggest. Teaching plan also is also very critical. I could see that Dr. Nirangi's template also the teaching plan is there. Analysis to the research question or the assignment questions. And if you're having any references, then again you have to show, but only the key references. They are not expecting a long reference list, but the key references are sufficient. So this is about how do you develop a teaching note, or else the other name is the instructor manual. So before moving to some examples and your template, let me summarize what I mentioned. So when you're developing a case, so case is having the main case and the teaching note. When you're taking this case and the teaching note, that should be nicely connected. When you take the case, so the case should have a sort of an issue, and the whole issue should be developed surrounding a case protagonist. You have to identify the protagonist, show the protagonist, bring the protagonist to the forefront. So that is an sort of like scenario to accept the case for an international publisher. Protagonist is critical. Then the theory. So you have to think about how do you connect the theory. Theory may be a framework. Theory may be a sort of an analysis that we are teaching. So theory, what's the theory that you are connecting should have in your mind, and what are the learning objectives that you are going to ask. So when it comes to teaching note, you can see these are very critical aspects. So taking these things to in our mind, so let's look at your template and some examples as well. So I'll stop sharing this document and I'll be taking your templates for the discussion. Right. This is the template given by Dr. Neelangi to me, and she discussed about this template at the beginning of the workshop. So, very first thing is the title of the teaching case. As I told you, the title is very critical. Title should be very catchy. Let me show you some examples about titles. So I have to stop share several documents and open it and show it and the closing. So I hope you can bear it with me. So let me take some examples. Right. So this is the book that we published this year, and you can see the names of the cases or the titles of the cases that we have given. Let me show you the content, then it's easy for you to understand. You can see the first one. From the brink of extinction, the remarkable reassurance of the Asia Assets Finance. Navigating through the storm, management buyout of the Sterling Lanka apparel. Working capital rise as an opportunity or death trap. The case of ABC Pet Care. So you can see this is a disguised case. We call it as a disguised case. Sinking in the deep water. Again, ABC Shipyard Project. So this is from a government organization. But again, we didn't reveal the company name. So likewise, so you have two options. Either you can publish the company name with their permission, otherwise you would go as a sort of a disguise case. So think about your title. So how you make it catchy? Maybe that you are writing your title. So after completing everything, then only you can see the whole story. So therefore, don't be so hurry to write the title. Keep it to the end. So when you write it, the whole case when you complete, come up with a nice, catchy heading. Let me show you another example. That. Yes, this case we published in the case journal. So in this case journal publication, so this is about a certain apparel organization, but they didn't want to reveal the company name. So therefore, so we gave a name to that. That's the dots and lines because it's related to sort of the clothes and the dressing. So we thought of putting it as the dots and lines. So unraveling challenges of COVID-19 pandemic through risk and controls turnaround of this dots and lines. So through the heading, you have to give a hint about what you are talking. So here you can see that here we are focusing on the risk and control. So how the pandemic related challenges turn around, impacted on the company, how the risk and controls were about the risk and control turnaround. So with the help of risk and control, how do you turn around a particular company? So always you don't have to say the ABC, Sigma, XYZ. Think about some creative sort of a beautiful name to the company if you are planning to disguise your case. So this is also a very good example that I wanted to show you. Let me show you another example. So this is basically still we are editing because this is from the second set of students who developed the cases. Still we didn't publish them, but thought of showing that to you because it's very catchy. So this case is from the Pygmy, and our students have received in writing permission to reveal the company name. So look at that their heading, please. I hope everyone can see now. The driver has arrived. A revolution in Sri Lankan rights. The phenomenal success story of Pygmy Sri Lanka. So when it comes to Pygmy Sri Lanka, how they came up as a successful story. So you can see that the driver has arrived. So it's very interesting because we all are waiting sometimes for till the Pygmy driver comes. So how the concept of this Pygmy came into Sri Lanka. So how they developed a very successful company, how it is happening. So this is still we are editing, Professor Sampath Kelavalathan and me still editing. So this is the in our next publication. So this will be our one of the very interesting key case. So likewise, so please develop a nice title for your case. Let me go back to your template again. Right. Yes, now you can see the screen. So then you have to write the name of the authors. Those things are not a big deal. Then you have to come for a abstract or a summary. So Dr. Nirangi is also here. I'm just suggesting instead of abstract, so if you can come up with the concept like preface or the prologue, that would be a bit interesting. So in Sinhala we call Peravadana. So it's not simply an abstract. It's just a sort of like a starting point to talk about the case. So instead of the abstract, if the writers think about some words like the preface or the prologue, that will be interesting for the reader to read the case. So let's look at some examples of certain abstract and how do you, or the rather preface, how do you start that preface or the prologue with some interesting points. Again, I will take some examples to show you that. I'm sorry, opening and like closing it takes a time. Sorry about it. Right. So you can see in this case, we have written a prologue. So in the prologue, since this is about the risk and control, as I told you, so we are briefly telling what is happening and what the case is planning to talk. Look at here, please. Having established itself as a pioneer in the apparel industry in Sri Lanka, catering to leading global brands, Dot and Lines reached the pinnacle of its performance 2019. However, the global pandemic soon started snatching its customers, and let's talk about what happened during the COVID-19 period. And for that, what the company did. Amid the business downturn, the executive committee of the company gathered on the first week of April to review the first quarter results of performance, triggering a vivid discussion around possible initiatives to proceed in this tough time. While some that improving risk management and control practices could be an important measure to revitalize the company. So accordingly, a new job position titled GM Risk and Control or our case protagonist was created, and the mandate to the turnaround the company was given to him, supported by the risk and control team. So now by reading the prologue, the reader can understand so what this case is planning to talk about. Another important point I wanted to emphasize. So before bringing the prologue, this is not compulsory. So this is a certain practice that Professor Sampath and me are doing in our books that we are publishing. So we are bringing a certain incident. We are bringing a certain incident. So for an example, so before moving about very critical incidences or the very attractive things happening in that particular field. Likewise, here we are bringing certain incident to the top of the case. Look at this situation. On April 2020, the recently appointed GM, Risk and Controls, called a meeting with his team for the first time. As he mentioned, so we have been appointed as the Risk and Control team for a very important reason. So here you can see this is an interview call. And we are saying this is from the GM Risk and Control. Why? Because we want to bring our case protagonist to the forefront. So you also could bring a certain incident, certain code in order to show that. So look here, this is very interesting to read. So with this, we are trying to make the reader to make an interest about reading the case. So that is optional. But as I see, some good cases are having certain incident or a code given, which give a sort of hint and make an interest for the reader to read the case. So that is up to you. You can decide whether you can bring a certain incident to the forefront. So instead of the abstract, you may come up with the words like the prologue, the preface. In Sinhala we call Peravadana. So it's talk about what is happening. So that is the starting point of the case. Then, if you look at the given template, I'm not taking the template again, I'll simply tell you. If you take the template, you have to talk about the industry. So when you're taking the industry, you can bring some unnecessary information as well. It's not directly linked to the particular issue that you are talking about. So that's okay. You can bring some industry for the student to understand what is happening over there, but it doesn't basically talk about the specific issue that you are focusing. So you can bring, so here we are bringing the apparel industry, and you can bring the required in-text citation. That is also very critical. So you can bring few key references, and here as the in-text citation about the apparel industry. So once you bring the industry, then you are coming to the real issue. So in this one, I will show you some more example. We called it as the story of dots and lines. So within the story, you are bringing the whole issue. You would bring it in several levels. As I told you earlier, you would bring it in several levels. So the story of the dots and line, we are bringing the novel focus on the risk and control, some subtopics. You are bringing the organizational structure. You are bringing certain incidences happening like the brainstorming on the risk and control turnaround. And you can see that these are data. So the interview quotes become mainly the data here. So the interview quotes also we have brought as the data. So likewise, we are developing the story, or we are developing the issue, or we are developing the dilemma within the storyline of the case. So here you have to be very focused, because you have to evaluate whether you are bringing required and the necessary level of information for the student to later analyze the questions that you have given. So now you can see several sort of the level of themes that we are using. Right? If I go down, that's it. You can say, then we are ended up with some notes. Notice what this is a disguised case. So we talked about some jigsaw method of teaching. I will show you that with the teaching case. Then architectural description of specific solutions drawing from business information and technical viewpoints. Teams responsible for developing, testing, and implement technology embedded strategies of the organization. Likewise, if you want to bring any notes, please bring them, especially if you are disguising. So tell that this is a disguise case and you can bring several references. But if you're going for international publication, first of all, look at their structure. Some people says the references should go to the teaching case. Some publishers says no, bring it to the main body of the case. So that's depend on the publisher's requirement. So likewise, we develop the case, then instructor manual. So the instructor manual, as I told you, the SAGE cases use the instructor manual. But when you comes to the emerging market cases, so another publisher, so they are taking the teaching note. Different words are using, but no problem. We basically talk about your teaching note. So if you look at your teaching note as well, let me show you the teaching note template as well. Otherwise, it's not fair. Give me a second. Give me a second. Right. You can see the teaching note template now. So when it comes to the teaching note, again, the title of the teaching case, synopsis, keywords, target audience, teaching objectives, teaching plan, research method, conceptual analysis, assignment questions, materials, analysis of the assignment questions. So your classroom experiences, okay, so and so forth. So your teaching note is basically, it's really good. So if you follow this template, so it basically you're writing to a international level of a teaching publication possibilities having teaching case you're developing. So use this teaching note. It's a very well developed teaching note template. Then let's look at some examples. Right. So in the teaching note, the very first thing that you write is the synopsis. So what is a synopsis? Synopsis, you can see, it talks about basically, it's an abstract. It talks about what happened in the case. So if the teacher take the case, so teacher would read the synopsis. And teacher says at the beginning, okay, look at here. So this is the case that we are going to discuss and the case talk about this. So by reading the synopsis or when you're writing the synopsis, make sure that you are like summarizing everything into a very short paragraph. Look here, please. Having established itself as a pioneer in the apparel industry in Sri Lanka, Dots and Lines researched the pinnacle of its performance. Following the outbreak of COVID-19, the situation turned unfavorable. So what happened? Then it says, so because of that, on April 2020, Executive Committee gathered and decided to form a position titled General Manager Risk and Control and to turn around the company. So you can see that everything related to the case, now we are summarizing and bringing it as a synopsis. Synopsis is basically an abstract. Once you develop your synopsis, you have to think about the learning objectives. So the learning objectives, as we all know, you have to use the words from the Bloom's taxonomy. So the different levels of words are there, and you would use those words when you are developing your objectives. So we are giving a small analysis, sort of abstract about what is happening in that case again. And we are saying by reading and discussing the case, students should be able to describe, evaluate, identify, and plus the recommend. So recommend is a very higher order level of learning out. So we are bringing to the recommend how successful risk management and controls change could be achieved in contemporary business organization. I want to take your attention to another point. So you can see that I have mentioned Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So these are our questions. So I didn't show you the questions there. These are our questions. So our questions are now linked with our learning objectives. So if you can remember the case triangle that I told you, so learning objectives now properly connected with the questions that you are asking. So do not write the objective something else, the question something else. So at the end, by answering the questions given, the student should be able to describe possible controls, evaluate the competitiveness, identify the risk factors, and recommend how successful risk management could change a particular organization. So, learning objectives and the question should be properly connected. So, before moving to research method, let me show you those questions. Then that would be easy for you to understand. Assignment questions. Identify the control initiated by the GM risk controls and his teams in the dots and lines in the post-COVID era. Evaluate the competitiveness of the apparel industry. Then we are telling, so we are having 2A and B questions. 3. In the backdrop of COVID-19, what are the key risks faced by dots and lines and what is the likelihood of the occurrence? Carry out the risk assessment of the dots and lines based on the matrix given below. So I wanted to take your attention on this point as well. So we are talking about the risk and control. So when it comes to risk and control, risk assessment is very critical. So now what we wanted to teach is how we are going to do the risk assessment. So risk assessment, so we are giving the risk assessment matrix and accordingly the students have to take the scenario into risk assessment matrix and assess the risk of the company. In the meantime, we are going to talk about, or in this case, we use the Levin's change management model as well. Because this case can be used in the change management lectures as well. So the Levin's change management, how they can connect the concepts in that model, like with the practical scenario. That's we call the simulation. So we are teaching the Levin's change management model also with this case. So therefore, we are bringing that one as well. So to do that, we are bringing some additional materials and we are teaching the unique selling propositions as well, right? So the risk assessment matrix, the Porter's five forces model, we talk about the SWOT analysis, the Levin's change management model. So additional video clips for your references also we are giving. So now you can understand that. So you have to link theory, objectives, and the question, and you have to take them into the same line. So that's the story of a successful case development. So one more point. This is the research method. So you have to write few sentences about your research method as well. So here we are saying the focused case is a disguised case developed based on the real life apparel company in Sri Lanka. We have disguised the company name and not revealed the identity of the key respondents and any data which make the firm obvious. However, the processes and the practices reported represent the actual scenario of the company gathered through the interviews done mainly with the case protagonist, GM risk and control, and the authors have not fabricated any data. So you have to write what is your research method. So this is totally different from the research method that you are writing in an article. This is what you have done in order to basically collect the data. So whether you have taken the permission to reveal the company name, so how you have collected the data. So everything in a summarized manner we write in the research method. So Dr. Nirangi's template, there is one more point. So that is about the teaching, what we call the, give me a second, teaching plan. So you can see that we have provided a 90-minute multimedia teaching plan and the teaching activities. So the level of descriptions given depend on the requirement of the publisher. The case journal wanted sort of an analysis, a detailed version of that. So we are saying 90 minutes, this is how we have developed, and we are using the jigsaw, the teaching case method as well. So that also was very interesting. So give a hint about how we are going to use the time when you're teaching the case, because you're giving this to teacher. Teacher should be able to read and understand. So how the time management can be done. So this is giving a hint about the time management of the case. So this is how a good teaching note looks like. So you can see the answers for the research question, answers for the assignment questions, the case question, connected with the theory. So here the theory is the change management model. We talk about the unique selling proposition, a marketing concept. We talk about the risk and control, the risk assessment matrix. So you could connect from different fields. You know why? Then only your case can be used in to teach different sort of subjects. So if we talk only about the risk and control, so you can use this only in a sort of a management accounting, strategic management accounting lecture. But since you have brought some marketing concepts, since you have brought some change management concepts, so that this case is open for those areas as well. So a very good case, maybe taking the points from related but different fields. Okay, so that is also a certain point that I learned from the experience that I wanted to share with you. So these are the answers for our research, the assignment questions that we are giving. And if you are interested, you would write an epilogue as well. Basically, at our very first draft that we submitted to the case journal, we wrote an epilogue also. Then the reviewer says, no, we are not writing epilogues in the main case, because the epilogue or the assessment or the analysis should be given to the student. But we were very interested about writing an epilogue. So then the reviewer says, if you really want, keep the epilogue at the end of the teaching. Not why? Because the teacher can conclude everything with the help of the epilogue. So that's up to you. You would write an epilogue, or otherwise that's okay. Don't want to write an epilogue. So we wrote an epilogue. So that helps the teacher to summarize everything very nicely to the students. Then the references that we mainly use. So this is one example that I have to show you as I would say it's a good case. Then let me show you few more examples from our published book, plus from certain planned publications as well. So if you look at our casebook, let me share it first. So So let's take the first one. From the brink of extinction, the remarkable reassurance of Asia Assets Finance. So we can see that we have given a small quote, an incident, and we have given a figure as well from the team as Asia Assets Finance. So one of the member was one of our students in our DBA program. So he was the case protagonist. So he was very interested about writing the case. We wrote a prologue about it. We directly came to the story here because we understood that the industry background wasn't much relevant and they have brought certain information about the industry within the story. So either you can bring a separate introduction, either you would bring it within the story itself. That is up to you, and that's up to the case that you are developing. So likewise, we developed the story and we came up with different sort of the facts, net interest income, different figures, assets and liabilities, shareholder funds, so and so forth, and some data that we collected. So that is the Rajiv's entrance to the business as the key player. So this business was about to bankrupt. The person called Rajiv came. So how he turned around the company was the focus of this case. So this is a sort of a good case that we published. So business turnaround, how it happens, so and so forth. We write in the main case. Let me quickly show you the main case. So there they have written some closing remarks as well. Up to you, up to the reviewer when you're going to an international publication. Some people says don't write closing remarks. Some people says you may write a closing remark to you, up to your reviewers and up to the public publisher that you're focusing. So this is one of the case and some sort of other information also given, net interest income, so and so forth, for the students to understand the situation. So another case, navigating through the storm, management buyout of the Sterling Lanka Apparel. Again, the Sterling Lanka Apparel. So we had one of the students. So he was the protagonist and developed the case like this. So identifying the protagonist is the key for a successful case. Let me show you one more example before winding up everything. Just give me a second. As I told you, so we are still editing this case, business case development. The drive has arrived, a revolution in Sri Lankan rights, the phenomenal success story of Whitney in Sri Lanka. So students have received Mr. Ajit Gunawardana's permission to publish the company name. So if you go down, you can see they also come up with a very long incident. For us, it is too long. So yesterday also Professor Sampath and me discussed about it. So we have to make it a little bit short, and they also come up with prologue. You don't have to write a prologue always. You would go with some other names like the preface, or if you wish some other name, no problem. Maybe the abstract even. So no harm. So then we talk about what happened in the industry, what happened in the visionary, how the visionary perspective came in. So what happened with the market leadership and pioneering innovation, because this is a very successful case. So likewise, the risk of the phoenix. So likewise, harnessing strategic brilliance for growth, visionary essence and the strategic mastery. So you have to come up with different levels of the headings to come up with the main problem that you present. So I guess you had a sort of an idea about how to develop a case and the teaching note. So if I summarize what I discussed, the case is having two components, the main case and the teaching note. The main case, you bring the dilemma, you bring the issue, and the teaching case, for the same dilemma that you brought, so you summarize and you yourself come up with the answers. So when you are writing answers to the question, you understand, so what are the lacking areas in the main case. So therefore, it takes time, a very hard process. For us, it's a very hard process. So have your own deadline and develop a good case. So thank you very much. Professor Sampath and me are here, so you can ask any questions and clarifications.
Let me take this moment to thank Professor Sampath Khelwalatanna and Dr. Sujiva Damayanti for sharing your insightful experiences and your expertise in authoring case studies. I am indeed sure that your insights today will be greatly beneficial in terms of authoring exceptional teaching case studies as a part of ICBM 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the conclusion of the information session and the first workshop for teaching case study development, organized by the International Conference on Business Management, Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce, University of Sri Jawadhanapura. Thank you so much for your active participation for today. And I am signing off along with the organizing committee of ICBM. Have a nice day. Thank you.